I'm gonna do a countdown from 3, okay? And then we're gonna shoot the scene.
Okay, yeah, I got it. Hang on a second. I'm confused.
Oh, what are you confused about?
My lines. They say I have to say the Candyman 5 times and then turn off the light.
There should be no confusion. You're saying those lines.
But that's how you get yourself killed.
Look, I'll say them out loud. I'll say them and prove to you there's nothing to be scared of.
No, director lady. I wouldn't do that if I were you.
Candyman? Oh no, I've been hooked.
I literally told you that was gonna happen. Oh, I think I'm gonna go. I heard the Exorcist castings are next door. Put your hand up if you're the worst person in the world. I'm currently 4 days behind on my 31 days of Halloween challenge. It's bad. I know it's bad. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. But I'm not going to give up that easily. No, mark my words, I will finish this challenge. If that means I have to upload 5 videos today, then so be it. I won't actually do that. I don't even know what movie I'm talking about. This is my planning, okay? I skipped the first day, and we're now on Tuesday, so I have to catch up 4 days. I printed out all of these little movies, right? But then I dropped that snow globe onto my floor. Look at that. Also, I managed to get a new one. It was sold out everywhere, but I still managed to get it. My entire floor was wet. Like, are you actually kidding me right now? After I dried it with a towel, this is the best I could do for tonight. I then used a hairdryer on it, so the carpet would be fully dried. As I used the hairdryer, I blew off literally 1,000 of those little movie cutouts. So now half of those movie cutouts are all behind my desk, and honestly, who knows where. Meaning I don't even know what movies I want to talk about anymore. I put them all into here and I'm going to pick one out. And whatever I pick out is going to be the movie that I talk about. I'm scared. What did that movie say? The Candyman. Okay. This movie right here is one of my favorite movies of all time.
So let's talk about it.
A little bit of interesting information. And this is like the background information. The movie begins with an incredibly long title screen, something that is a trend amongst older movies. In the background is this beautiful Halloween type movie vibe. Then we see a lot of bees. Like, I'm talking a lot of bees. It's a little bit like, hang on, is this actually the bee movie? Did we just actually put on the bee movie? Then this guy starts talking, and he's being a little bit dramatic, a little bit scary, but a little bit wise. He says, and I quote,
They will say that I have shed innocent blood.
Then it's a long pause.
What's blood for if it's not for shedding?
Then he's like,
I'll split you from the groin to the gullet.
I'm not a doctor. I'm not trying to be a doctor. So I was like, what the hell is a gullet? I looked it up and it's an esophagus. Basically just a thing here. Then in the background we hear a dramatic scream. What I've noticed about a lot of older horror movies is that in the intro, there's often just this random woman screaming in the background at the very end. Remember the bees from before? We then see them literally engulf an entire cityscape. Then he's all like, you guys can read that. I'm not reading that out. Anyways, this is where we meet our main character. Her name is Helen Lyle. Now, who is Helen Lyle? She is a graduate student at the University of Illinois, Chicago. Her degree or major, whatever they call it, is semiotics, which I had no idea what that was, so I looked it up. Semiotics is the study of the use of symbolic communication, apparently. It can include things like signs, logos, gestures, etc., etc. Helen is talking to this girl, and this girl is telling her about the scariest story she's ever heard, which is also true. So this scary story is set in Moses Lake in Indiana. Basically, this girl named Clara was being a babysitter for this Johnson family, when all of a sudden, a bad guy on a motorbike rocks up. His name is Billy. Clara likes canoodling with Billy, despite the fact that she has a boyfriend. She's been with this boyfriend for 6 months. He's really nice, and his name is Michael. But it's like whenever Billy is around, Michael gets put on the back burner. They go into the bathroom, and Clara has decided that it's time for her to lose her virginity. But first, she tells Billy about the Candyman. Who is the Candyman, I hear you ask? It's said that his right hand has been sawed off, and that he has a hook jammed in the bloody stump. They say that if you look in the mirror and say his name 5 times, he will appear behind you, breathing on your neck, ready to hook you. And naturally, she and Billy are like, yeah, let's try it. Billy says the Candyman 4 times in the mirror. Then he starts advancing towards Clara, and she's like, no, go downstairs, I have a surprise for you. Now, for whatever reason, Clara decides it would be a good idea to say the Candyman's name 1 last time. So she does, and then she turns off the lights. All of a sudden, someone appears behind her. Who is it? It's the Candyman. All Billy hears is a blood-curdling scream. Then blood starts dripping from the ceiling. Apparently, what he saw turned his hair white from shock. The Candyman killed her, split her open with the hook, killed the baby she was babysitting, but let Billy get away. It's said that Billy went crazy after the experience. Helen smiles a little bit, and then walks down a hall and goes into a lecture theatre. In this lecture theatre are 2 people, a guy and a girl, and the guy is telling this girl all about the babysitting story, but from a different perspective. The guy being interviewed is like, on the radio the story is that Clara roasted the kid like a turkey. Yes, those are his exact words. Here we meet Bernadette, or Bernie Walsh. She is Helen's best friend. She's also a graduate student. And we find out that she and Helen are doing some sort of paper thing that involves interviewing people. That's all I'm going to tell you for now. Helen then walks into this jam-packed lecture theatre where they are basically talking about folklore, Stream Folklore by Taylor Swift, and urban legends and all that kind of stuff. Now this class is talking about baby alligators and how there was an entire craze to have a little baby alligator. But when people were done with them, they flushed them down the toilet, so now alligators are living in the sewers. I know this isn't a true story, but there's the thought of a little baby alligator getting tossed out, getting thrown down the toilet because nobody wanted them anymore. That's heartbreaking. Then the professor is like, these stories, so the one about the alligator and the baby alligators, are examples of modern oral folklore. They are the unsolved conscious reflection of the fears of urban society. The bell then rings and class is dismissed. Helen then walks down the front, and this professor guy is literally flirting with one of his students, which, is a problem in itself. But it's also another big problem considering this man is called Trevor Lyle, aka Helen's husband. He thought he was slick. I saw that little flirting. He was 100% flirting. Being friendly? No, he was flirting. And just look at the death stare this student gives the wife. Just this look. Okay, so that's the girl there. Look. Look. I know we all saw that. And then when she left, she looked the professor up and down. What do we smell? Is that an affair I can smell? You'll have to keep watching to find out. Helen is thinking what we're all thinking right now. She confronts Trevor and is like, wanna tell me what's up with that Stacy girl? Trevor then has the audacity to be like, oh, I don't know, she just must be madly in love with me. Then he starts acting horrified at the idea that his wife thought that he had something going on with the student. But can you even blame her? Helen is very upset that Trevor is doing the urban legends lecture when he promised he wouldn't do it until next semester. This is also a big problem because she and Bernadette, remember Bernie from before? They're doing the paper thing on urban legends and they are gathering information from the freshmen. She's like, why did you have to ruin this? And you want to know what Trevor says? Actually, I couldn't just hold up the curriculum so you could work on your thesis. I still don't know why he didn't just wait until next semester to do it, but okay. Helen is staying back late. She's working on the paper. Remember the girl from the start who was telling her about the scary story, the Candyman, and how it's real and everything? Well, Helen is going over the tape of her telling the story again and again. That's Helen at the computer, and that is a cleaner who's just come in. The cleaner lady hears the Candyman being talked over the tape, and she's like, the Candyman, hey? And Helen is like, yeah, wait, have you heard about it? She tells Helen that in a place called Cabrini-Green, which is this housing project's place, that the Candyman killed a woman. She got this information from her cousin named Kitty, who just so happens to be working with her. So Kitty sits down and talks with Helen. She says there was this woman named Ruthie Green who heard a noise. She was in the bathtub when this happened. This noise sounded like someone was trying to make a hole in the wall. She called 911 and they didn't believe her. They thought that she was crazy. She called them again and they still didn't believe her. By the time the police finally came, she was dead. She had been killed with a hook. Helen looks at a whole bunch of news articles. She shows her findings to Bernie. We then find out that Cabrini-Green is a very dangerous place. We then find out that Helen's very expensive condo was once built as project housing. Ruthie Green's killers, or killer, smash their way to the back of the cabinet behind the mirror. Behind Helen's mirror is just this fake apartment, which I find to be incredibly creepy. Like, what do you mean there's just like a fake apartment hidden behind your medicine cabinet? That's very creepy. Then they're both like, we don't believe it, so let's just say it. It being the Candyman thing, where if you say the Candyman 5 times, he comes and gets you with the hook. They say it 4 times together. Helen says the 5th time. Bernie doesn't say the 5th time. And then there is very ominous music. It pans to Helen's bed where she's sleeping alone because Trevor still hasn't come in yet. There's this awful rustling sound, and then Trevor jumps on the bed and scares the living daylights out of Helen, wakes her up, disturbs her sleep. The question I want to know is, where was he spending all his time? Helen and Bernadette want to make their thesis like the best thesis ever, so they're going to go into Cabrini-Green to do some research, which is a lot of dedication because the place is very dangerous. They hype themselves up a little bit, and I actually don't think that Helen likes Trevor that much because she's like, do you think that if Trevor was in our position, he'd go and investigate? And Bernie's like, no, he definitely wouldn't. So then Helen's like, yeah, exactly. And then they go and investigate. This is what Cabrini-Green looks like. And the reason why this place is dangerous is because people are dying pretty much every single day, and the place is overruled by gangs. A few local guys ask Bernie and Helen what they're doing, where they're going, and if they're police or not, which, to be honest, I think that's a pretty fair question to ask. They walk up this passageway. Helen is taking a lot of pictures of the place when one of the apartment doors opens and a lady appears with her dog. The dog barks a little bit and then the lady slams the door. But I'm just going to commend her on her very well-trained dog. Literally in my neighborhood, people do not know how to train their animals. Basically, just where I live, the majority of people do not have trained animals. They are so badly trained. They don't listen to the owners, and the owners cannot control them. If you are going to have a dog, especially a big dog, like a lot of people in my neighborhood have very big dogs, they cannot control them. And you need to be able to control them. Like, if that dog was one of the dogs in my neighborhood, it literally would have gone after them. Anyway, they investigate this stinky little room, and Helen wants to investigate the bathroom despite the fact that Bernie is like, Helen, just leave it. Helen does not want to leave it. They open the mirror and peer behind the medicine cabinet, which is where the killers would have snuck through. Now Bernie really wants to go, but Helen just wants to keep taking pictures of the place. But Helen doesn't just want to take pictures. No, she wants to sneak through. She wants to go the exact same way the killers went. Obviously, Bernie is like, this is a terrible idea, but Helen's like, just hold my coat. She sneaks in with her camera and just keeps taking pictures. I'm starting to think she should be a photographer. Bernie sits down and waits for her. Keep in mind, she's put Helen on a 5-minute time limit. So Helen goes through and just look at this image right here. She is coming out of the mouth of the Candyman. Symbolic? I think yes. She then notices a pile of candy on the ground. But it's not just any candy, no. Inside the wrapping are razor blades. Bernie sees a broken kid's doll on the ground, and at long last, Helen finally gets out of there. Now, as the pair are leaving, this lady named Anne-Marie shows up. Anne-Marie was the lady with the well-trained dog from before who opened the apartment door. She is rightfully annoyed at these very nosy people who are just poking around where they're not wanted. Like, I'd be calling the police on them. Like, what are you doing? Helen gives her business card to Anne-Marie, and then Anne-Marie's baby starts crying, so she goes to see and check on her. They are then let inside Anne-Marie's apartment, and that is Anne-Marie's baby. His name is Anthony, and he is all she has. Also, look at these cute little stuffed animals up here. Anne-Marie confesses that normally when white people come around, the experience isn't very pleasant, which was why she was a little apprehensive of Helen's arrival. And it is completely understandable as to why she would feel like that. You know, because of racism. I hate racist people. Now, Anne-Marie was Ruthie's neighbor. She tells Helen and Bernie that she heard screaming and that she kept calling 911, but they just wouldn't come. She then confesses that like everyone is scared, that she's scared herself of the Candyman, but she'll never let him get to her son. Then it cuts to a dinner scene with Helen and a whole bunch of colleagues. This is Trevor, which is Helen's husband, his friend. He is one of those elitist people who believes that they're better than everyone else in the world. And his entire thing is urban legends. So he's like, oh, I heard you're dabbling in my specialty. And I'm not being mean. That's just like genuinely how he talks. He tells them that the legend of the Candyman first appeared in 1890 and that he was the son of a slave. Basically, his dad had amassed a really large fortune from this device to do with shoes after the Civil War. Candyman went to all the best schools and grew up in polite society, which I'm assuming is just like rich people. He was an impeccably good artist and he was very sought after. Anyways, then some like rich landowner is like, I want you to make a portrait of my daughter. The daughter and the Candyman fell in love and she became pregnant. The landowner wanted to exact revenge, so he paid this pack of people to do the job for him. They chased Candyman to a town called Cabrini-Green. They used a rusty blade to saw off his right hand, and no one helped him. They then smashed these beehives and stole the honeycomb. They then smeared the honeycomb all over his naked body. He was then stung to death by all the bees. They burnt his body on a giant fire and then scattered his ashes all over Cabrini-Green. Helen has now found herself back in the apartment complex where Ruthie was killed. She is again taking more pictures when she goes to knock on Anne-Marie's door. There's also just some random kid sitting at the front of it. This is the kid and he tells Helen that Anne-Marie isn't in there. We then find out that his name is Jake. Helen tries to ask Jake a few questions, but then Jake is like, I can't tell you anything, otherwise the Candyman's gonna get me. And then she's like, wait, are you scared of the Candyman? He's like, I'm not scared of anybody, but you shouldn't be walking around here. It's not safe for you to be walking by yourself. She's then like, show me where Candyman is. It can be our secret. Unless you're too scared. And so obviously, to prove that he's not scared, he's gonna go and show her. There's a party and they are building a bonfire. We walk past this playground and to this bathroom block. Jake then says that a kid was killed in that very block. He was originally with his mom across the street, but he was complaining too much, so his mom sent him outside. And then he needed to go to the bathroom, so he went to the bathroom block. Everyone heard screaming. This dude went over to check it out. Now, the guy who was really tough, he went in and he was horrified. He was in there for 5 seconds and came flying out. What had happened to the boy was that he was lying in a pool of blood. Helen then tells Jake to wait for her because guess what? She is going to be going into the bathroom block by herself. Not a smart idea. She goes in before being like, hello, which is what she never wanted to, but she does anyway. And it apparently really stinks in the bathroom because she keeps like holding her nose and he's like, oh, oh. Side note, graffiti of the word sweets is also in this bathroom, but it was also in the apartment complex before. And then there were the candy wrappers, so you know, like candy sweets, Candyman. She sees this little toilet thing, and it's just bees inside. Someone then goes behind Jake, and he turns around and he's like, Candyman. 4 people then come into the bathroom, and Helen is like stressing. She's like, guys, I'm not a cop, I promise. Helen gets beaten up and Sweet Jake goes in and checks on her, and before anyone is like, why didn't Jake help? Jake is a kid. These 4 people were at least teenagers. I'm pretty sure one of them was like an adult. Jake couldn't have like fended them off. Before Helen got attacked, the ringleader was like to her, I hear you're looking for Candyman, bitch, and then like beats her up. So the 4 guys, they all get arrested, and then it's a lineup situation where they each have to say the line again, and then Helen has to say which one of them was the one that attacked her. So she rats her attacker out. Jake is a little bit worried because he says to Helen that like the Candyman thing, that was supposed to be their little secret. And now the Candyman is going to be after him. And Helen's like, it's just a story, Jake. And he looks at her like, now I'm with the kid. I believe in that stuff. And I know a lot of people are like, it's just made up. I don't care. I don't care. I believe it. Same as like with like Bloody Mary. It was like, don't say Bloody Mary's name and then turn around 3 times. Never in my life have I ever done that. And besides, my overthinking brain would then correlate every single bad experience that would happen to me after that time with the entire experience. So say I did Bloody Mary or the Candyman in the mirror, right? And then the next day something awful happened. I would convince myself that the reason why the awful thing happened was because I said whatever I said in the mirror. Is that rational? No. But is my brain rational? Also no. So that's why I would just never say any of those things. Anyway, Jake is like, wait, the Candyman's not real? And she's like, no. And then it flashes to her jumping into Trevor's arms and hugging him. By now, her eye, the swelling in her eye, it has gone down significantly from like, where she was beat up. She has made them a nice dinner. Also, Trevor is being like insanely suspicious. He is 1000% having an affair, or he's doing something sketchy. There is just something about that man that I don't trust. By now, it has been obviously a while because she walks back onto the college campus and Bernie comes up to her and like looks at her eye and is like, wow, it looks so much better. Helen then notes the racial injustice, so I'm also going to talk about that. Literally 2 black people were murdered and the police did nothing, but then a white lady was beat up a little bit and then it was like this entire thing. And like that just should not be allowed. I'm sorry, but being beat up a little bit is in no way comparable to being murdered. And it's the fact that this is a reality that so many people face, and that's just not fair. In the fight, Helen's camera got smashed, however. Bernie hands her a little box of pictures and he's like, we were able to save some of them. Also, a lot of publishers are very interested in their story, like about the Candyman and everything. So Helen is looking at the pictures in this car park when we see the Candyman's footsteps. He's not real? Then what's this? He starts saying her name and she's like, who's that? He then says that again. She starts getting these weird flashbacks and she's like entranced by this man. He says that the reason why he had to come and visit her was because she didn't believe in the stories about him. So, Candyman, I believe in you. You don't have to come after me. He said like to her, be my victim. Be my victim, be. As in like, biz, 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 biz. As in like the bees at the start of the movie and the bees in the toilet. As in like Barry Benson, Then there's more bees. Like from the start, remember them? Those bees again. And he's like, now I must shed innocent blood. And then there is screaming. And Helen wakes up on a bathroom floor covered in blood. And there is a woman screaming in the background. The woman screaming in the background is Anne-Marie. Remember Anne-Marie? She had the baby named Anthony. Well, she is wailing for Anthony. And there is literally blood all over her apartment. And she thinks that Helen was the killer of her baby, so she knocks her to the ground. Hearing the pain in Anne-Marie's voice, it's just like, it's quiet. Helen has this knife in her hand, and to get Anne-Marie to stop pushing her head against the ground, she stabs her in the arm with it, and then she has the knife and is just holding it over Anne-Marie's body because now Anne-Marie is pinned to the ground, and just at that moment the police open the door, so let's just say that it's not a very good look for Helen. Helen is taken down to the police station. She is hysterical, she's covered in blood. Things are just going very downhill for Helen. Anyway, then she is in an interrogation room and they tell her that she is under arrest. Okay, so this is what happened. This is what the rundown of the night was. Anne-Marie opened the door to her apartment and her dog, remember her dog, the well-behaved dog? The dog's head was decapitated. Then Helen attacked Anne-Marie with a meat cleaver, which is this thing. Also, Anthony is missing. Nobody knows where Anthony is. She tries to call Trevor, but he's not at home. Like, seriously, what is up with this man? As she looks into the toilet, she gets a flash of Anthony in Ruthie B's bathroom, and he's just like in a little drawer, just kicking his little feet. And then there's Anne-Marie screaming, and then the cell door opens and Trevor appears and he like hugs Helen. There are a lot of reporters. Now, remember all the blood all over the apartment? All that blood came from the dog. They think that Anthony can still be alive, but like, trust me, when the first time you watch it, you think that all that blood is Anthony's blood, and even though it's not, like, it's still a very sickening scene just thinking about it. She is then in her living room with her husband and this like lawyer dude. All the reporters, they say that like Anthony's body may still be found like alive, and Helen admits that what happened was she blacked out and then woke up in a pool of blood, but like it's obvious that no one is going to believe that. Then she has a bath. Trevor comes in and kisses her and he's like, I've got to go over to the campus for like 20 minutes, but I'm worried about leaving you alone. And then Helen is like, where were you last night? And he's like, oh, I was fast asleep. A lie, no he wasn't. After her bath, she gets a beer and she smokes and she looks at the pictures that were taken, that were salvaged from the camera. She is just flicking through them. And see that photo that I just showed you just then? She fiddles with it and then it like reveals the Candyman. She goes to the bathroom and is looking at the mirror there, when all of a sudden the hook comes out of the mirror and is like, so she quickly slams the bathroom door and sprints away like she's like Roadrunner or something. She leaves her apartment and out in the hallway she then sees the Candyman again and he's like, be my victim, you know, like bzz, bzz. He's like, do you believe in me? And she's like, you stay away from me, but like, girl, just say you believe in him, like he's standing right in front of you. He then says that he has Anthony. He again mentions that she didn't believe in him and that's why he's there. He then says that he has to kill her and that her death will be a tale to warn children. He's like, come with me and be immortal, and then he gets the hook and digs it in the back of her neck. Meanwhile, Bernie is now at the front door and she has flowers with her. There she is, right there. So yeah, the back of Helen's neck was hooked. So she's laying on the ground and she's like bleeding out and she's just like, Bernie, go, he's here. Bernie comes into the apartment, she sees the Candyman and he like apparates her away. Trevor then comes into the apartment to see his wife laying in the kitchen and it looks like she's stabbed herself. She passes out and when she wakes, she's laying in their bed and she is being injected with something and there's a police officer next to her bed and she has handcuffs around her wrist. Anyway, then she like rushes out into the living room and Bernie is laying on the floor and she is just... There is so much blood. Like, I'm looking at it right now and I'm not even going to show you. Like, if you want to look at it, you got to look up yourself. But there's just a lot of blood. Like, this death was very, very gruesome. There are bees and she's taken away again. And the Candyman is like whispering and she sees this like dark red bathroom and she sees Anthony in there. Anthony is crying. Helen is now in a psych ward and she is literally strapped down. And she basically can't move at all because her hands are tied, her feet are tied. The Candyman then appears and like gently like does this with her face. Now she keeps screaming out, murderer, he's here, he's under the bed. And all the doctors come in and they're like, oh, we need to dose this girl up because no one believes her. Anthony is there in the bathroom. That's him there. That person's hand was the Candyman, so the Candyman has not killed him just yet. She is wheeled down the hallway. That is Dr. Burke there. She is talking to him. We then find out that for the past month, she has been in this mental health facility. An entire month has gone by. She's like, I want my attorney. And he's like, yeah, well, we need to just make sure that you are fit to be able to stand trial. Because everyone thinks that she has some like hallucinatory disorder. He then shows her video surveillance of the night she was committed when the Candyman appeared to her and like gently did that with her face and was like, I'll take you away or whatever. So she is yelling and thrashing about on the bed, but the Candyman is nowhere to be seen because obviously she's the only one who can see him, no one else can. She is very upset. Her best friend is sad and she's a little bit in denial. She's like, I want to believe that no part of me was able to do that. But then that would have to mean acknowledging the Candyman. And I just think that she doesn't want to acknowledge that he exists. Which is like why she's in this whole problem in the first place. She's then like, I can prove that I didn't do this. I can prove that the Candyman is real. So she looks at the mirror and she says his name 5 times. And then she looks at Dr. Burke and Dr. Burke is like, at first, nothing happens. And it's like that he doesn't exist. But then out of nowhere, Dr. Burke is then stabbed in the back of the neck. The Candyman has appeared and the Candyman has now killed and brutally slaughtered Dr. Burke. He then looks at her and is like, you're mine now. He mentioned something about tonight, so there's going to be something going on tonight. Then he slashes the restraints on her wrists, so it's going to look like she's the one who killed Dr. Burke. The Candyman crashes out of the windows, so then she follows after him, and then like the alarm siren is blaring, and there's sounds of lots of nurses fussing around. She's like climbing out. She attacks a nurse and then takes off her clothes and then is wearing the clothes, so it looks like she's a nurse. She uses these nurses' keys and escapes. Like literally the security runs straight past her because they think that she's a nurse. She is now back in her apartment and everything is different. And guess who is in there? Guess who is painting? It's the student. the girl who was death glaring? Helen, I think we have found the girl that Trevor was having an affair with. And who was right? We were right. Both Trevor and the girl, Stacy, they are very scared of Helen. Like, Stacy is like backed in the corner and she's crying. I mean, Helen does have a little bit of a crazy look in her eye and she does start like throwing things around. See, look. Basically, the plan was that Helen was never going to be getting out of the hospital. Helen is just sitting down in shock about what has just transpired. She leaves and Trevor dives for the phone. He's in her ear like they will all abandon her at the Candyman is, and she's looking in the water. It's nighttime and she is back to looking and exploring in the houses. So she creeps through. She finds his room full of candles and gets a hook off the shelf to like use as a weapon, I suppose. She investigates and is like shining her little torch everywhere. She sees all the blood on the floor and then starts hearing breathing. She has found where he sleeps, like he's just there sleeping. She tries to stab him and it's just useless. Anyway, she is willing to agree with the Candyman's deal. Now this deal was that she surrendered herself and then Anthony is free. So she is willing to do the deal now so Anthony can be saved. There's this like really surprisingly tender moment between the Candyman and Helen. Almost like it's a romance. And he's like, be immortal with me. And then he transfers the bees from his mouth to her. So now she's covered in bees. Then he's like, it's time for a new miracle. Whatever that means. And she wakes up just like swatting her face to get away from like, you know, because the bees are on her. On the wall it says, it was always you, Helen. And she is on the wall. So essentially, Helen is the Candyman's reincarnated lover. And that's why his moment with her was very tender and romantic, because he sees her as his lover. Remember, because he fell in love with that girl, but the dad was a really terrible person and got him killed. Then she starts hearing a baby cry. Anthony is in the bonfire, so she crawls up to try and get him. Jake then notices there's like a kerfuffle, so he peers out of his window to see what's going on. As he's looking out, he's like, he's here, and then him and a few other guys have all the fire supplies. So all the things you need to make that bonfire thing into an actual bonfire with fire. All the boys start dousing the pile in gasoline while Helen and Anthony are still there. So the bonfire is then started and then there's a whole entire crowd that gathers around. The Candyman is holding Helen and he's like, it's time for us to go now. We're never going to be separated again. Because remember, she was pregnant. His like first lover. So that's why he stole Anthony. So Anthony could be a replacement baby. And this is what he's talking about, like the miracle thing. But Helen grabs like a stick of fire and burns him. The bonfire collapses and beams of wood fall on her. And she's like screaming and in a lot of pain, obviously, because it's like a beam of burning wood. So then she's like crawling across the ground and she's like literally set on fire. Like, see that fireball there? Yeah, that's like Helen. So she crawls out of the fire and then everyone goes and checks on her. And the Candyman's like, come back. And he's very upset about this. Helen is holding Anthony. Now, poor Helen, she is all burnt. Like, her entire body's burnt, obviously, because she was trapped in the fire. But Anthony is fine. She's holding Anthony. Anthony is then reunited with his mom. It's a very beautiful scene. The Candyman is then burnt in the fire, and then all these bees come flying out after him. Like, those are literally all bees. So the Candyman dies, and Helen also dies, and then it flashes to a scene where it's Helen's funeral, and she's laying in the casket. Trevor is there, as well as Trevor's, well, he's not even her mistress anymore. It's like his partner now. Ew. Now, there's not many people at Helen's funeral. There's literally just Trevor, his like partner, and the guy from the dinner party who's like, urban legends are my thing. When all of a sudden, everyone from Cabrini-Green then joins. Look, they're all there because they all know that she sacrificed herself for the baby. And he's just in shock. But like, see, look at all the people who are coming to visit her. Jake then throws the hook, the Candyman's hook, down in the coffin. Trevor is hiding out in the bathroom and he is not looking too good. She is walking around their newly furnished house. He's imagining all of his and Helen's nice times together. Then he is looking in the bathroom mirror and he's like, oh, Helen. So he says her name and like a few times and then turns off the bathroom light and then she like appears behind him. That's what she looks like now. She has a hook hand and then she then kills Trevor. Stacy goes into the bathroom and Trevor has been mangled with the hook, and so she starts screaming. So what happened is that the Candyman spirit then went into Helen's body. So like now Helen's become the new Candyman. This is the scene that we left off of. That is obviously supposed to be Helen, I think. So that is the movie The Candyman. I really like this movie. Would I recommend that you watch this movie? Yes, I would. I feel like the Candyman legend in itself is something that you would tell out of the ghost story on Halloween night at a sleepover with your friends, you know, when you were younger. That's the kind of vibe that the Candyman legend gives me. Thank you so much for watching. Right now, I'm going to edit this as fast as I possibly can and get this uploaded as fast as I possibly can. I'm going to try really hard to catch up on all the videos that I've missed, on all the days that I've missed. I'm gonna try my hardest to catch everything up. Like, trust me, I'm gonna try my absolute hardest to catch everything up for you. But thank you so much for watching. I will see you all later, tomorrow, hopefully. Okay, bye. Bye, Mouse Pack.